Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Quest for the Bestest. It's the podcast for Back on Banter, where we review every single Best Picture winner from 2025. Best Picture nominee, rather. I misspoke. The winner has yet to be decided, and we are going through and figuring out what we think out of the 10 films that have been nominated, which one we think should win. Today, we are talking about the Walter Salles film, I'm Still Here, out of Brazil. Ainda Estou Aqui. A Brazilian film about the Brazilian dictatorship in the early 70s, which is something that, well, since none of us are particularly great and knowledgeable experts about that, we brought in a ringer. We brought in somebody to help us. Say hello to Anna, who is here joining Tanner to give her impression on the film, because she's Brazilian.
Our cultural liaison.
Yes. Yes. So I'm very much looking forward to her opinions on the film and hopefully a little knowledge about the state of that country back then, 50, 60 years ago. So before we do that, let's do a little housekeeping. Remind everybody, last time on the show, we talked about Dune Part 2. And Abram's got a bunch of posters for this movie up on his wall, so could you believe it? It got a 9.6 going at spot number 1. We really love Dune Part 2. Fun movie, cinema exquisite, I think we would say. So go check out...
And I often do say that, to be fair, yeah.
Go check out that review to see all of our thoughts on Denis Villeneuve's smash blockbuster epic from a long time ago. But will it win Best Picture? Will the Academy agree with us? Because it's that 9.6. There's not a lot of room to for us to put something else up there.
The Academy can try and argue with that if they want to, but I'm not sure if they can put up much of a fight against our mathematically proven average.
Yes,
math is math.
That's right.
Exactly.
That's right.
Exactly. So we will see where I'm Still Here goes. But that's that. Okay, Abram, do you have a comment for us to ponder about? I'm a little behind on uploading, so maybe not, but...
Okay. MZ Ralph. Please add proper punctuation and annotations, if you can, to your YouTube.
Maybe even citations.
Oh.
Yeah.
Footnotes?
But Ralph,
Yes.
if I can call you Ralph, you've left a very, very good comment here saying, great review, guys. I saw The Brutalist for the second time yesterday. My first watch, I was enamored by the technical uniqueness of the film. It's certainly well put together and very distinct, artistic even. The second time, I've come to appreciate and respect the screenplay for what it is. For me, The Brutalist is a poignant and timely social reflection, especially regarding the plight of immigrants. It could mean more than this, and certainly many other people can relate. But viewed from this lens or perspective, the film's more flawless, and if viewed this way, perhaps people have fewer issues with the plot. The mere act of establishing this monumental building, I think, is an allegory for America. Going into the rewatch, I was hoping to identify where the film could have been trimmed further. I think the only irrelevant scene that they could have omitted is where Erzsébet and Zofia carpooled with Van Buren to Philadelphia. I was mind blown when I realized how the use of a jazzy rendition of You Are My Destiny was implemented. Genius. With a focus on Van Buren lusting over Toff. Funny because the word destiny appears frequently throughout American history. And after that rape scene, there's a shot back to the party dropping the song's final line, That's What You Are. I think it's just a big middle finger for the audience to relish.
We relish that middle finger day in and day out.
That's what we try to make this show. Big middle finger that the audience will relish.
a middle finger made out of relish, my favorite hot dog condiment. Okay, on that note, Tanner and Anna, would you guys do us a tag team of the plot synopsis of this movie?
Absolutely, Timo. So this film, I'm Still Here, is set in 1970, Rio de Janeiro. We get like a typewriter type of text on screen to let us know the exact setting of this film. And we are following, of course, the Paiva family, who the patriarch of said family is Rubens. I mean, just feel free to jump in and correct us on any pronunciation that we mess up on here. Rubens, he was a former congressman and current architect. He has his wife and count 'em, 5 children. And that's right. And as Timo has established, this is in the midst of the military dictatorship in Brazil from the 60s through the 80s. And Rubens was sort of he was a left-leaning political figure in his time in Congress, so he is quickly found out and abducted by the military, the Brazilian military, and taken to an unknown place. And his family is desperately trying to figure out where he is, if he's still alive, and that is largely what the film concerns. Anna, did I miss anything?
I don't think so.
Okay. Sorry, I did take the steering wheel on that one, but...
No?
You're just too good at your job, Tanner.
That's right. Well,
No one can blame you.
if I can, Timo, take the reins from you for a second, I think
Yes.
I will ask Anna then what her thoughts on the movie, opening thoughts on the movie.
Yes.
What do you think of it?
Let's hear it.
Well, one thing was that I thought it was beautiful how they concentrated. Their focus wasn't just on it's a Brazil during the dictatorship. The focus wasn't just the dictatorship itself. It was also how families lived back then, and how love and I don't know was still pretty dominant even in a very hard times. And how I was thinking about this while watching the movie, and also about thinking about my grandparents, how people were still sort of living fairly well, even if they were not necessarily with the right wing party. And yeah, I think it was really nice to see that first. Of course, like Tanner said, he got abducted, and then the focus shifted from just the love to how hard they took with the ambush and everything, how everything was very confusing. No one knew what was going on. If I keep rambling, you guys can stop me anytime.
That's all right.
We all do it in our opening statement.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly.
But yeah, it was just we were talking about this too, how this is a biopic, but when you're watching it, it doesn't necessarily just feel like a biopic. There's no main figure that we have to follow. It's everyone, basically.
I was kind of saying when we walked out that, like, it is a biopic, but it's not like our more standard American, especially like Oscar bait biopics, where like this figure is so important, and let the movie impart on you how important they are. It is about the day-to-day life of is it Eunice? How would you pronounce Fernanda Torres' character's name?
Eunice.
Eunice is, she is the main character, and of course, as you come to learn towards the end of the film, and then the text on screen and the photos and everything of the real Eunice, she is a hugely important figure in Brazilian politics and human rights and everything like that. But like the film is giving you more her day-to-day experience, having to reckon with what is going on and what has happened to her family as it's really been turned on its head.
Tucker, what did you think about this? Maybe from like your film viewing's point of view.
Do I have another point of view?
No, we heard a historical point of view, I think, just
That's
there.
a good point.
Yeah,
That's a good point. Yeah. You know what, Timo? I'm going to go on a limb. This time, I'm going to do it from my point of view.
Oh,
I feel
interesting.
obliged.
Okay.
Oh my God.
I'm still here. I think it's a good movie. I think that it really does nail what it's going for in showing just how a very normal family who just has interactions with one another. They have their inside jokes. The children tease one another. They're going about their day-to-day life. How you can exist in a society, in a culture that is going through something that is politically tumultuous, and that things can creep up slowly on you. And even though largely seems like they felt like they were separate from a lot of that, they were tied up into it really, really quick. And the movie kind of hits a gas pedal like immediately, like halfway through the movie, as our characters become embroiled in all of the political things and are being interrogated and stuff. And I think that is an interesting concept. But unfortunately for me, I don't think this is one that I will really ever think about in any particularly strong way. Mostly because I think that the characterization is just okay. I think that Fernanda Torres does the best with what she's given, and I think everyone in the movie is good with what they're given. But in terms of characterization and screenplay, there's not really many moments that I really loved a particularly large amount. There's not really like great character traits that like my mind immediately clicks to. It is mostly about just a reflection of this can happen to people in culture, and I think that's interesting. But it didn't really hit me personally because I was looking to be a little bit more invested in an interesting set of characters, whereas I think we're given a very normal set of characters, and that's okay. But it means that I was not really like super engaged by this movie.
Abram, what did you think?
Yeah, I really loved I'm Still Here. I was really quite moved by it. Anna, I really liked what you were saying about love, because I think sort of the idea I left the theater with yesterday was just the the beauty and emotion in Perez's performance, which to me I sort of sum up as resilient. I think that the way she's able to portray herself in the face of the censorship and the dictatorial overreach and violence and torture, the resilience she shows, to me is sort of the heart of the movie. I found it quite interesting also in reading about the film today, and reading about the political context of not only the coup in the 60s, but the way that this film ended up being sort of uniquely prescient as Brazil again faces attempted coups. I sort of gained a deeper appreciation, I think, for what the text of the film is doing, and sort of metatextually what this film stands for. And it really just made me even more excited, Anna, like I said to you before we started, to have you on to sort of hear more about how this film reflects your grandparents' experience, but kind of moreover how it's situated in sort of the larger Brazilian culture as well, and modern political landscape. Because sort of as an outsider, as someone who really understood this really just through research, and through that performance of Torres, I was quite moved by it. But I think there's even many deeper layers for us to unlock in why this film is, in my view, uniquely successful and
Mm.
among the best nominees.
I would say that I enjoyed this movie. I'm probably somewhere between Tucker and Abram on the like scale. I thought that the pacing and the slowness of it like benefited the film quite a bunch. That the kind of this somewhat mundane life. I'm hesitant to really call it mundane because I think the film actually does a lot of work to show us that these characters are actually not all that normal, that they're very wealthy. They have actually kind of a lot of power in this society just from their position in it within it. And so, but just to see how they interact was to me quite interesting. I like slice of life stuff. So seeing this, and then we spend a significant amount of time setting up this family. And then when we turn that on its head and Rubens is taken away, seeing how everybody reacts after we get to know them, I find quite satisfying. And like Abram and Anna were talking about, the love in this film I think is very important and present. The just the unquestioning love that exists between the characters, and that that's not where the conflict lies at all. And I think that is kind of a non-Hollywood look at how to tell a story like this. I think that a more American-oriented film would have probably worked in a bit more questioning of the fealty or the actual faith between our characters. And this film doesn't do that at all. And that's actually really important that Fernanda Torres' character is able to go through the whole film, believing and fighting, and we see, especially in this back half, in the second part, where she's fighting against a different regime. She's fighting against a different government later on in Brazil's history, just to kind of get the one, get something from, and that kind of quest that we see her go on, in which it's never really finished, and this thing is never really there. This event just rips through a family so intensely that I think the film says that it could destroy a family. It could rip it apart and never allow the family to get rebuilt. But Fernanda Torres' character's resilience and the love that's in the family keeps them together. And the fact that we spend the last scene of the film in a family reunion trying to take a picture long, well into basically the future of the film, decades and decades after the main events have happened. I think it really
The
goes to
far-flung future of 2014.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Whoa.
Just imagine.
Like, my kind of read on it,
Yeah.
and I think there's probably more depth to this, but I like this idea that the disappearance, a forced disappearance can remove a person and remove a father, but it can't kill the whole family. I quite like that, and I find that the "it can happen here" feelings are aroused
Well,
and
yes.
excited by this movie because, boy, oh boy, we see how it happens, and you put yourself in the character's shoes. You just immediately are like, yeah, when dudes like this come to my house that are not maybe cops, maybe we can't know, and if I ask them, they'll shoot me. What am I gonna do?
Yeah.
Because I don't think that's unfortunately out of the realm of possibility anymore, and so I think that's also like the situation of this movie. Why Sony Pictures Classic picked it up for American distribution. Why they think that it's worthy for awards from like a studio business perspective is that like they see how this film is talking about stuff that I think a lot of Americans actually really care about and are really worried about.
Yeah. Tim, I'll jump immediately off of that because I do want to spend, a good chunk of this review at least talking about the familial connections, the love persevering and everything, because I think that's, of course, very key to the narrative here. But because you just brought that up, Tim, I wanted to invoke a couple other Oscar-nominated films that jumped to mind while I was watching this one. One is another international feature nominee from this year called The Seed of the Sacred Fig, and another more, matching with the time, location, and subject material is a film nominated from a couple years ago called Argentina 1985. And
yeah,
from the
heard of that
from the
one.
title of that one, you can sort of discern what that is about. But I really thought about this film, The Seed of the Sacred Fig, which is set in modern day Iran, and how both of these films sort of tackle this idea of authoritarian fascist ideology bleeding into domestic lifestyles. That might be domestic lifestyles that might be wealthier than the average income in either given country, and might be more maybe more well suited to so weather the storm of tumultuous politics being tumultuous. But how nonetheless those ideologies can sneak in through the front door and sort of tear things apart. That's largely what the Seed of the Sacred Fig is about. And in turn, I'm Still Here is about how it's a more optimistic take on that thing, where it's, yes, a fascist government can remove a key figure of your family unit, and yes, it is so hard to sort of get a rein on how things must reorient themselves and get that person back and everything like that, and convey what they mean to you to a government that is uncaring and unflinching in their pursuit of perceived enemies. But how the family unit and love and connection between people can persevere throughout all of that.
Yeah, and I think the one place where this movie really nails that particular thing to me, what you just said, Tanner, is the fact that we get this third act, like the last 20 or so minutes of the movie, that are a couple of steps forward in time, and we get to see the ways in which the family unit, even though their father has been disappeared for decades at that point, has been able to continue to survive and still care for one another. And I really like that we're able to, and I think for me that was actually the most interesting point of the movie, is that I had no idea that we were going to time skip forward twice, once, let alone twice, and be able to see how over time they're able to recover from this and maintain some sort of normality and love for their family. And of course they get married and they have children and there's new generations. But while that is all true, they still carry that grief with them, and still reflect upon and are mourning in their own ways, even decades later, the terrible times that their family went through and the disappearance of their father figure, family member. So I think creatively, the strongest part for me is giving us those steps forward into the future, so you can see how the resiliency and also the grief are sort of held hand in hand over the course of decades and generations, even.
Mm-hmm. Anna, what do you make of this?
Well, not trying to say the same things all over
Yeah,
again.
you're fine.
Yeah, you guys are right. I also liked the very end as well, when I think it was a news or documentary, something that she was
some
watching.
sort of segment, yeah.
That was bringing all the facts back to the audience. Everything that wasn't told, they were telling how actually it happened, and it brought me to one part where I think it was still in 1996 when the reporter asked Eunice, don't you think that the government should be focusing on other things instead of getting those who have been dead back to the news? And she's like, no, I think that everyone they should be punished. They should be brought back to life. The family should have that sense of, oh yes, my loved one did die, and now I know how they died, and it wasn't just a figure of my imagination. So I think that is really important, that they show those things, because I think it's a way of saying that they should hold some accountability for the things that happened. And even today, there's still many, many people who want the dictatorship back. They have the sense that what was happening back then was just the liberals' lies, that it's just things that the liberals are telling just so they can have power again and things like that. And then you're like, no, it actually happened. You have proof. You have families who have lost many, many loved ones for the dictatorship. So movies showing those scenes, showing that those things actually happened, I think that that's what Walter Salles wanted mainly, to just sort of bring back to mind of what happened, because not too long ago we had another election where we had Bolsonaro trying to bring dictatorship back, and many people were and still are in favor of bringing the dictatorship back. So it's mainly a movie to show what happened, but also to bring back that reality and be like, is this really what you guys want? Again, is this really what you have in mind for your future?
Serve up a reminder of like the pain that was widespread across the country, like just within a lifetime. I think it's also something that the time jump, sort of really encapsulates very well, is that like the people who lived through this, whether they be children or somebody Eunice's age, is that they are still alive. Eunice died in 2018. Having gone through all this, the book that it is based on, written by Marcello, one of the children, was released in the 90s, I want to say, or no, was it released in like 2015? No.
What was it? He had two books.
Oh, he had two books. Okay,
the one for this movie was 2015. Yeah.
I see. Okay, interesting.
In some way, actually, this is quite parallel to some of the stuff you were talking about with Nickel Boys, in that is a book based on actual things that happened. And one of the big things that we talked about in that review, which you can go watch now, a nice plug for other Quest videos, is that these things that are presented as historical stories are still things that are relevant to people who are still alive. Of course, almost everyone who was involved in that is older now, or who lived through it. But it might feel distant to people that are our age, but it's important to show the real recency of this. And of course, all things relative time wise. But I think it's really interesting that both of these films kind of bring up that fact and sort of raise its awareness in our mind of like, this is still something that is relevant to us today, even though it might feel like it's far in the past.
For me, oh, go ahead, Abram.
Well, I was also I was thinking about a film called Missing, which we covered on Quest
Yes.
not too long ago now, looking at the CIA-backed coup in Chile,
Yeah.
and I was thinking about where that film ends, which is sort of where the plot as it relates to the coup ends with I guess spoilers for Missing if that was on the top of your watch list at
Oh, I was
43
gonna
years.
watch that Costa Gavras film from 1983. Damn.
That sort of ends as we reach the revelation that, in that case, the far left journalist who had been disappeared had in fact been killed and stuck inside of a wall, and we're
Hmm.
taking his body back to the States, and the film ends. And I think that, in contrast, this film, which are very similar in a lot of ways, to me is even more effective, and it's solely because of what you're describing, Anna, which is this sort of desire, I think, on behalf of the filmmaking team and on the behalf of Marcello in his novel, to move beyond sort of the more theatrical nature of life under the dictatorship. It's interested, I think, in something deeper and less flashy than the more sort of political thriller
Mhm.
notions that we sit with for a lot of the film.
Yeah.
Those two epilogues are concerning us with these ideas that in some way in scenes that seem quite mundane, to use your word, Timo, where I don't think the film before that was in any way.
Mm-hmm.
We sort of find ourselves feeling reverence or like an outpouring of emotion, all kinds of emotion for the discovery of the death certificate. And then as we're sitting together as a family, it puts the film, I think, in a higher and more important context as we're talking about. And I think that that to me is why it is such an exceptional and such an important work. And it's also where I think we sort of see the brilliance in Torres's performance. Also the performance of her mother, who is also in the film, portraying an even older version of her. This sort of um, generational it's chase of closure, but a sort of a disinterest in totally closing the chapter. The film is sort of in this interesting line here where we're finding relief in the closure, but we're not allowing that book to be put on the shelf.
Mm.
And I think that makes the film preceding it even more important, because we're not meant to sort of forget that. We're not meant to forget now that we know what happened to Rubens. We're not meant to just say, okay, that was in the past, and now look at how happy they are, and look at the way they can persist as a family. We're supposed to still think back, we're supposed to still reflect and keep both narratives in concert. And I think that that's really an incredibly critical part, not just of the political messaging of the film and the importance of the film, but just as success as a screenplay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I will note that a good chunk of this film viscerally deals with the reality of what a disappearance is. And I think
Mhm.
that that's what the middle of this film, the beginning is concerned with what does life look like right now? And then the middle is what does a disappearance at the hands of the military government actually look like? And I think that this middle section is rather fascinating because we engage in it is kind of theatrical, but it is very realistic to me. This drama of h- learning information, giving it to some parties, and keeping it from other parties. That is a great
Mm.
strategy to have a dramatic scene. And this is not just one scene. This is, I would put the middle chunk of the movie.
Yeah, a majority of the film is you're sort of not just talking about the part where Ionescu is in captivity. She is
yeah,
in prison.
It starts. It
like
starts
when she
from.
gets out.
It's from when the
Mhm.
guys show up at their house at the very. It's not really at the beginning, but at the beginning of
Yeah.
this process,
They
all
they
the
show
way.
up. I checked my watch they show up at the 30-minute mark, and then he is sort of Rubens is sort of taken into the car. Last time we see him is at like the 35-minute mark, basically.
Yeah. So from then on, of the figuring out like where is he? What do you know? Who do we talk to? That whole scene I think is really powerful to me because of our familiarity with the characters. Regardless, I think if we feel they're super great characters like Tucker's maybe criticizing, but we understand who they are. We understand that there are the fact that the young kids are around is rather important, and that the you know the adults in this family realize that it's not a great idea to let the kids know what is really going on because
Mm.
they are freaking out and have to hold it under wraps so that the
Uh-huh.
kids don't go apeshit. And that section just like really, it kind of floors me because the inability for the family to do much of anything, and then the scenes of torture and of psychological torture are intense and terrifying. I mean, being shown your own picture in the book of dissidents, and they're asking like, "Do you know anybody in here?" And it's like, "There's you," and you're like, "What? But what
Mhm.
she
Yeah.
seemed to not have done
There's also
anything."
like a confusion of like when was this photo taken because we don't see it taken. Her holding up like the placard or whatever, and you're like, well, when was this? Is this sort of fabricated somehow in some sort of
Mhm.
early version of photo editing of some kind, or
Yeah.
are we just did we just completely forget this as Eunice possibly did? I don't know.
Being in that mode in the middle of this movie, like, really, to me, makes it quite powerful. And the stuff that comes later is all adding to this.
Mm.
But the actual act of disappearing Rubens is very, I think, very well done, and really kind of this like shaky and terrifying core of the film.
Mhm.
I quickly do want to reflect back on the early chunk of the movie, which is mostly slice of life family just going about their days and finding a dog and having ice cream together,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
there's some stresses, but I like, or I wouldn't say I like this, but I think it's an interesting way to set up the more politically stressful and narratively stressful elements of the film very slowly. In the first 30-40 minutes of this movie, there is some like background conversations between what's the dad's name again?
Rubens.
Yeah.
Rubens and his friends who are a little bit more politically involved, and we come to learn that he's a congressman, and there's like some tension that comes from that. But also there's this one scene that is the oldest daughter just driving somewhere with her friends to get stopped by at a checkpoint of some kind, and they get frisked and they get like thrown around and like basically interrogated, and she comes home, and that scene it doesn't come out of nowhere because
Mhm.
we're in the context of this time, but the first 15 minutes of the movie are like, just kids having fun on
You'll
the beach,
see-
basically.
yeah.
Like
and,
a
and then we're
they're-
like, bam, you're at a checkpoint and your sister's being interrogated and your friend, and like things go crazy. And I think it's an interesting balance to see where this intersects this upper classes family's life. It's in these specific moments of tension that they then are like ripped from their everyday reality of just living a block away from the beach and hanging out and whatever, and then they can be like instantly wrapped up in something like this because it is a larger socio-cultural framework that is a political framework that they exist in, even though it does feel like, I think, to them and for the beginning of the movie, that they're pretty distanced from it.
Yeah.
It does impact their lives at multiple points in that beginning part of the film.
That beginning one I think is interesting because to think about kind of, is this disappearance an act of randomness or is this an intentional choice? And that checkpoint there seems like it's an act of it's a random encounter that the family has. This is just something that goes on. But I think we're very much led to question and to I think the film makes it pretty clear that like Rubens Paiva's disappearance was not a random act. They came after him. They confirmed he was gonna be there or not, and that's why he was taken, because of his dissidence.
This is, I think, a really critical element of the film, which is this notion that as we're sort of seeing these different moments of pressure being applied directly to the family, nonetheless, life has to continue. I mean, we're talking about a coup that was decades long, a regime that was decades long, and the life and culture didn't end. The people still went to work and they went to school and they adapted and found a way to live. And I think that is to your very earliest points, Timo, one of the scariest things to reflect on if you're in the States or elsewhere, wondering about the stability of your democracy. To what extent does your life change as governments change hands? And I guess, Anna, this is someplace I'd really love to turn it over to you, because I know that your grandparents have a greater familiarity with this period, obviously, than we do. And I'm just curious what you made of, from their experiences, from your experience watching the film, what you made of this life under the dictatorship.
So I was actually going to try to talk to my grandpa before this, but sometimes his stories kind of get long and bumpy, and you never see where it's going to end.
He is an old man.
But from conversations even before thinking that I would be here in the US or anything like that, I remember him talking about my great-grandmother and how sometimes he and her would have like conflict of opinions, because my family is very religious, and in Brazil, when you're religious, you're tending to be more on the right wing, and my grandpa was very much the opposite. He actually is one of the Christians that I know that it's the most liberal-minded that I have ever met. Like, even my mom, like him and my mom is younger than him, but he's way more, I don't know, part of
progressive
him. Yeah, he's way more progressive. He's been in favor of the Labour Party for years and years. I don't know when he started, but I remember him saying that many people back then just, even if they were against, let's say, lower class people, would just accept it because they thought that if they didn't accept the dictatorship, they were being against what is right. That was also something that were in people's minds, like, I don't want to be considered wrong. I don't want to be a bad person. So they're telling me that these liberals are doing everything to destroy the family, to destroy our community, to destroy what we believe in. So we're with the dictatorship all the way, and he had many difficulties with that. And I was going to ask him how does someone who always believed in the Labour Party survived without being stopped by the police or anything like that. But he lived in the rural area, so I don't think there was that much.
He didn't live in Sao Paulo or Rio de Janeiro.
Exactly. If you lived in those areas, for sure, you would have gotten stopped or,
I wanted to ask, because when we walked out of the theater, you mentioned, harkening back to this first 30 minutes or so, that is, we open on all the family on the beach playing volleyball, finding a stray dog and taking it in. Like, you mentioned that it reminded you of stories that your mom would tell you about growing up in Brazil. She grew up in, like, the 80s, of course.
Yeah.
So, well after this film and sort of towards the end of this military regime. But, I don't know, did that have any bearing on your thoughts on, like, the family life of this either?
It was towards the end of the dictatorship, but it was still like fairly new. Mm-hmm. Like, even my dad, he was in the Navy when dictatorship ended, but it was still in people's minds. The military was still probably very strong.
Yeah, there were strong feelings against them, most likely.
Exactly. Yeah. So, for my mom, I guess it was just really hard for people back then to get out of poverty, I think, to get out of living under conditions that they thought it was the right thing. Like, my grandmother thought that, we lived in what it was right to do. We were just very humble. We didn't have much to eat, but that's what is right. And it was like, no, if you talk to anyone about how you lived, everyone would consider you being as the poor as you can be. And she was really happy still, because the way that she grew up is that we don't have any means, we don't have much, but we have love, we have our faith, we have things that keep us grounded, and we keep going because of this. And my mom, she was a little bit more lucky because when the dictatorship ended, that's when my grandpa started getting more jobs, and things were getting a little bit better, at least in his experience. And she had a few more things like better schools, better ways of transportation. But what she remembers the most is going to the beach with my grandpa, them listening to Aha. My grandmother loved.
Oh, yeah, sure,
And
yeah.
Wham.
Take on Me, etc., etc.
Exactly. Yeah, so she would listen to those in the radio, and even the songs in the movie, I would listen to it, and I was like, oh, I remember my neighbors listening to this. Of course, older people in my neighborhood would be listening to it. But yeah, everything, like all of the good moments, even for me, I like the same moments that they had, I had with my family. So I felt nostalgic, and I was like, I miss Brazil at this point.
But like the songs in it and the life that you see, to Abram's point of like the life and culture continuing, I think that's something that Salles is really tapped into, continually doing these contemporary needle drops of like your young people's rock hits in Brazil of the time.
Yes.
You mentioned that's like, that was like the hippie music of the time. So of course all the teenagers were listening to that, the people in the family listening to it. And hey, it's great music to listen to, and it makes the film feel a little bit more, poppy and propulsive, and coming out of moments where it is a little bit more dour and serious and not fun for the family, but they pull themselves out of it with these happy moments of togetherness.
Yeah,
It's
I mean,
not fun for all ages.
It's not. No.
No, it's good. Better to be young in this movie. I notice. I was just gonna note how the music and this kind of like the life that they led before the disappearance, did seem, and the music, I think, continuing on as like as a bit of escape, as a bit of way to like go beyond the confines of this repressive society. I'm thinking about the sister that travels abroad to London and then sends Vera, who sends back a couple of messages, and the just like how those factor into the film. Well, let's complicate our situation. Let's have one of our characters not be around, that we know what they're up to, but they are not in frequent communication. And so how does that affect the family? The family that we see as very tightly knit and all together. So what that like ends up as in the theme of the film, I'm not quite sure, but I think there is something there, and the fact that she comes back later, comes back to Brazil to basically find out what happened, because nobody would tell her what was going on. They were all too scared of reprisal, too shaken.
Well, I think they also wanted to kind of protect her from it.
Of course, yeah.
Like, she was lucky enough to get out. Worry. Yeah, and let's not like put the pressure on her, not have her worry she's off, going on Abbey Road and having fun with her friends. And I think actually in terms of like plot elements in the family, which again I enjoy fine enough, but I don't think is particularly interesting. I think the element of the oldest daughter going off on a like an extended living in another country trip, I think is really interesting, especially in what it shows us for the family that is remaining in Brazil as a way for them to still come together, because as things are like going downhill and they're becoming more and more stressed, it is actually the moments of communication from Vera that are when they come together the closest. They watch the tape that she edits and sends, and I'm like, she did some good editing work there. She wrote out this letter and timed it with the clips. Like,
she was in the dark rooms. She was splicing stuff together.
That's sick. And also she a couple of letters that she writes and these things help them come together.
Yeah,
exactly. But it's interesting to note that escapism in this really tough time comes from one of their family members not being there. And I don't really know what that means thematically because the movie's about disappearances and about being separated from family. But in this specific instance, it's a separation from your family that helps them to come together even deeper. I just think it's an interesting parallel, and those were the moments where I really felt something more interesting was happening to me on a plot level or on a character level. That I'm like, it's interesting that they're able to come together over the separation, and using her. They're like living vicariously through her, which I think was just a really interesting narrative touch. Or well, I guess that actually happened. Do you say narrative touch when it's based on real life? Like,
it is narrativizing a real world, a real event.
Isn't real life just art at the end of the day?
God, that's so true, Tucker. That's so true.
I don't know, man.
I want to talk about. Let's talk about Fernanda Torres and her performance and Eunice as the character. She is, we've been talking about the family unit, but she is the focus of this film. Even really kind of before Rubens disappears, but it is squarely on her shoulders after that moment. And I mean, she's very good. Don't get, I think she is very good. The reviews and reactions and even awards bodies are singing her praises, even giving her awards, and nominations abound for her. The act of putting the movie on her shoulders is even like it's a meta thing and an in text in movie thing that she is heaping so much responsibility on herself to not only take up the family, basically lead the family from here on out after she's in prison for 21 days or something. Do they say how long she's away?
Yeah, it's like 21 or 25 days.
Yeah, she's gone for weeks on end and then comes back and tries to pull everything together, and we can kind of see that resolve throughout her performance. I think it is a very steely performance as she tries to keep a lid on everything, where she doesn't have her big crying, weeping moments where she breaks down. No, she is able to...
Your best actor show reel at the Oscars moment?
Yes, exactly. Precisely, Timo.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what if they choose like what moment.
God, they better do clips. They haven't been doing clips in recent years, and it's irking me. But anyway,
they better be doing the clips.
The moment of her performance are these more silent moments where she is either looking at the camera or looking at her family and trying to really make sure that she does keep everything down, bottled up inside her, because she can't let it out, lest her family be subject to all the emotions that she is feeling, the knowledge that she is burdened with.
It's her way of keeping the family together, I think.
Yes.
There's a moment when, well, there's this interesting thing that the film does in how it disperses information towards the end of the film. There's this character, I believe her name is Martha, who's a teacher, and was the only person who could confirm that Rubens had been taken.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a breakthrough where Martha is willing to testify and prove that Rubens had been taken. And there's small moments of jubilation from Torres where she thinks that they have what they need to open this case and discover the whereabouts of her husband. And then so quickly the film takes that moment from her as she learns that, in fact, her husband has been killed. And not only has he been killed, but his body might be in a mass grave. It might have been thrown into the ocean. Nobody even knows. But in that interim, when she thought there was a breakthrough, she promised that they would go back out for ice cream.
Yep.
And we end up at the ice cream parlor, but now she's saddled with this deep, deep sorrow that her husband has been killed, but moreover, this even more complicated mission of, as you put it, Tanner, keeping a lid on the situation because she's not told her children.
Yeah.
And so we're sitting here.
What is she surrounded by, Abram?
She's surrounded by complete family units. And it's this incredible moment of editing and performance as her children are playing hangman at the table and she's not there. She's looking around and she sees a husband and a wife and children, a husband and a wife and children, all of these familial units, and she knows that her husband has been killed, but she has to sit here and not reveal that. And I think that what Fernanda Torres does in silence in this movie is more impressive than anything I've seen from another actress this year verbalized. I think that she gives, in my view, the performance of the year. I really think that she is exceptional, and you. It's not that just that you empathize with her; you're almost in awe of her. The
Yeah.
way that she can, upon knowing their husband is dead, turn away and take a drag of a cigarette, knowing that she has moments to compose herself before one of her children, as they do, comes in the
Yeah,
door.
there is a
Mhm.
lot of that in this movie. Is the kids running in from the beach or playing soccer with their friends at the moments where undercover military agents are in their homes going through the family's belongings, or threatening her sort of subversively, and a kid will just rush into the room and be like, "Hey mom, what are we having for dinner?" or whatever. There is a liveliness to the house and to the family that stands in direct opposition to the fascist authoritarianism that is breaking down the doors, or I guess more accurately, knocking at the doors and demanding to be let in at moments in the film.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of, I mentioned the clips earlier. I mentioned the clips, and what is Fernanda Torres's moment in a film where her moments are her big moments, where her character is sort of and really in the spotlight, where she is steelier or more reserved. The moment where she gets emotional, really, where she allows it to boil over effectively, is the scene where what's the dog's name?
Ping
Pimpao?
pong.
Pimpao? Where Pimpao is run over. Yes, very sad for Pimpao. And we don't know if it's necessarily like the military who's done it, if it's one of their cars, or if they potentially opened the gate to let the dog out. But that's when she confronts this car that has been sitting outside their home for weeks and weeks, and tells them to get out of here, and demands to know where her husband is. And you think back on why that may be the moment for her, and it's effectively the moment where another member of their family unit has been taken away. She cannot she cannot stand by and even let something like a stray dog that they took in, that has become part of their family, be taken away by these people, or by the outside world, I guess.
It's an interesting moment because it's the moment. Well, it's not entirely true because we see the real brutal torture, but it's the moment from our principal cast where we see a moment of real physical violence as
Mhm.
she's slamming on the window, and what it makes me think of is not only, because I agree with you, Tanner, it's an incredible moment from her. The way is just smoldering is not the word I'm looking for.
Yeah, she's boiling over. She is steaming. Yeah.
She has this intensity about her in the road, and it's an incredible moment. But it also makes me think about the different forms of resistance we see in the film.
Yeah.
It makes me think about it turns out what Rubens has been doing, per one of his associates, to catch the ire of the dictatorship, is that he's giving letters to families who have no information about loved ones, or
Mhm.
and other people are housing people. Nobody in this narrative is, as we learn from his associate, a member of the armed struggle.
Yeah, they're not the
Yeah.
ones. Nobody in this movie is the ones kidnapping Swiss ambassadors or whatever.
They're resisting in different ways, and obviously, Eunice, her resistance, especially in her life that we see in the film after the dictatorship, is through legal channels.
Yeah.
And I think that that's very interesting. I think that the way that the film, and even small acts of interpersonal resistance, like Martha delivering her statement, which she is so afraid to give, and in under the cover of night in the rain. I think that the way the film shows these ways to stand up that don't involve having a gun in your hand is another really critical part of the film.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm. Anna, what's your take on Fernanda Torres, as someone who's far more familiar with her work as the most famous Brazilian actress, probably?
You can consider her like a pretty big actress, but the thing is, this is actually the first movie that I've seen her like be serious in.
I see. Okay.
Because she is more known to be a comedian.
Interesting.
Uh-huh.
I used to watch this TV show with my mom. Would be late at night, but she would let me watch it because she was in it, and we all loved her, or still love her. But yeah, it was a comedy about how she used to work on a bridal shop, whatever. So this is actually like a big impact on me. It's like she has range. She can be very funny and also move my heart and make me cry at least 3 times while watching the movie.
Yeah. What were the emotional moments for you, I guess?
Well, the first one was actually when Rubens was getting in his car. All that I was thinking was, oh my God, this is like her last moment with her husband. This is him. He looks at her and you can see that he knows that nothing is going to go well. And he keeps staring at her even in the car, and he's smiling, and it's like saying goodbye almost. And I was like, no, it's okay. It's okay. I know how it'll end, but it's going to be okay. Second time was the time when Ping Pong died.
Oh, yes, of course.
But not just because...
Moment of silence for Pao.
Not because he died. It's just that I could feel her limit being reached. Yeah. And the third time was when she got the death certificate and the family was at the table. And what I liked was when they were talking about when did you realize that he's not coming back?
Thank you for bringing this up. This is one of my favorite scenes in the movie.
Yeah, I was like, this is really important because the mom, I guess she wouldn't have talked to them about it because she was trying to
protect them
and
but
bottle it in.
Kids are intuitive.
They are, and so it was important for them and for the audience to be like, of course, they had a moment when they realized that their father wasn't there. So how was it? How did they deal with it? And then her saying that, what was her name again?
It's a B. It started with a B. Hang on.
Babiu?
Babiu. Yeah, Babiu.
Babiu.
Babiu. Yeah, she... Because even before she says anything, like, when she's in the steps and looking at the empty house, you can sort of feel that she is having a moment of sadness for the house, for the life that they had. But then she confirms it when she talks about it, but she confirms it in a way that she's like, oh yeah, I realized that Dad is not coming back, and that hit me hard.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think that the role that information plays in the narrative is extremely interesting.
Yes.
And in every sense, in every person who can deliver information, the censorship by the regime, which I want to return to, but also the even Eunice's decisions of what she says and doesn't say. There's a real power to knowledge. And I thought it was quite interesting, this position we're in as viewers, where oftentimes we know more than many characters in the scene, but that's not always the case. Because I think about, again, Vera in London, and what we come to realize from her anger about the lack of information she's been given about her parents and her sister being disappeared and tortured for various lengths of time, is that we come to learn that in London, this is international news.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that to me is a really, really critical part of the film and a real difference in the film. And again, it makes me wonder about resistance, and it makes me wonder about information. There was this, in my reading, I found, which I'm going to pronounce incorrectly, El País, I think, is a big news outlet in Brazil, and they were sort of giving this really interesting reflection on different dimensions of the repression under the dictatorship. And I'll share this in the description for people to read, but the way that and we get a little bit of this in the film, how all of the newspapers had to go through military censors.
Yes.
And big portions of things were cut out.
Yeah.
And this piece I was reading was talking about this publication Estado, and how they would, when they were told to strike things out, they would put poetic verse in its place as a way to signal, well, there was something here you weren't allowed to read.
Yeah. That's
And
right.
I think that sort of that is another key idea that the film is trying to impart. The danger of censorship and also the disparity in coverage and the role of news. Uh, there's this publication that comes to photograph the family and to
Yep.
tell their story. And even they want a certain emotion on the faces of the family. It's another great
Mhm.
moment from Torres when she insists that they smile and they don't get the
Yeah.
dour image they want. So we're in this position, I think, where we're as viewers forced to reckon with all these different controlling interests in how this story is told. And that's again why the epilogue is so important. Finding this, as was later established, as I learned in my reading, by a president of Brazil who had been tortured herself. This establishment of this bureau to get the truth is so critical. And I think it's really important to pay attention to where in the world this story was told, how the story was told in Brazil, how our characters receive the information,
Mhm.
and which characters receive more than the other. I think to me that's almost you can almost read the film solely through that lens and try to get out of the relationship between Vera in the West, in London, and the family actually dealing with the dictatorship. Who gets to know what? That's
Yeah.
very, very
I mean, there's literally a moment in which Eunice, I'm going to use the word censors, but she's meant to, she wants to be protecting her family. She leaves out a part of Vera's letter where she's like, "Hey, I see that Dad got disappeared. What's going on?" Vera writes about that in a letter, and usually doesn't read that out to the rest of the family. It's another one of their daughters. Hang on. It's another one of the next oldest one. Eliana. Eliana is the one who finds it and reads it out. Like sort of in a confrontational moment with her mother, where she's like, I understand that you're trying to protect us, but you're also lying to us at a certain point." And so yeah, the withholding of information in the family unit is so fascinating as a means of like protecting, but then also Eunice is keeping everything so close to her chest, keeping everything to herself that it's tearing her apart and overwhelming her.
Yeah, it's an extremely tough thing to do, to bear
Yeah.
all that weight as one person and to be the support structure for other people and to not necessarily have that for yourself.
Yeah, which I think is interesting because we talk a lot about communication and information in this movie, but Eunice doesn't have that many people that she can talk to, especially once her husband is gone. But even before her husband leaves, like they don't talk too much about this kind of stuff between the two of them. I guess it's not as relevant to them until obviously it happens to them directly.
Mm.
But she feels very solitary for someone who is very much the center of a family unit, especially as we see these time jumps. We see her have like close relationships with her family, but the friendships and relationships we see her have with people closer to her age are pretty few and far between. And I think that might be part of the reason why I don't feel like I get as much out of her as a character. She's very much in the scope of the movie a mother first and foremost. Most of the interactions we see of her are of her with her children, and I like the elements where she's choosing what information to share with her children. What can they take? What can they understand? How would she feel about telling them this? But we don't see too much of her personal life, her personal desires, her personality. I think because we don't see her spend time with many people her age, like just like relaxing. And that's something that I might have wanted to see more of, to like more personally connect to her outside of her role in the family. But I do think that for it creating her as sort of a very solitary character, and we talk about communication being something so important, her feeling like she's even kind of surprisingly isolated, even as the center of a family. I think it's an interesting balance, but one that ultimately kind of distanced me a little bit from her as a character. But just a balancing thing, I guess.
It's interesting because I feel like there's a scene that like is directly about that, where
Sure.
she's meeting with her husband's colleague who I can't remember the name of.
Oh, that's right. And he invites her to come to dinner. She's like, no.
Yeah, being a mother is too much. You know, I
That's
have
a
a
good point, that's a
mother.
good point.
That's enough. Yeah.
Yeah, she's like, there's too many kids to raise or something like that.
Yeah,
And I think that's almost like that's almost like the film answering that point you raised, Tucker, because I think it's an interesting one, of about how the priorities change, and maybe that is also this that is what's lost in this authoritarian culture, is that space for those
Social.
relationships.
In
Mhm.
some way, the social circle contracts. It goes from having a pretty wide net. It seems like at the beginning of the film that Dalva and the other friends are
It's
always
like Dalva and Dana or something like that. Yeah.
Dalva and Dalal are like they're always
Yes.
coming over. They're always calling on the phones. And once the idea that the phones are unsafe, that you can't trust information going through them, that it you're right. It totally falls away, and we just
One of the
we seem to everybody seems to just start looking out for themselves and their own family, their own kin.
one of the government agents that enters the home at the beginning said basically, or it might be in this interrogation scene on like the military barracks or whatever, says something to the effect of, sure seem to have a lot of people coming in and out of the house. As if that's like, that makes you guys suspicious that you're talking and meeting with a lot of people. I mean, as we come to learn, Ruben's circle, his friends or whatever are also helping him deliver these letters and so on and so forth. So like that, it is the authoritarian government forcibly closing off connections between this family has, forcing them to turn in and support each other. But if then, of course, as the point has been reiterated a number of times, Eunice feels that she has to keep so many things to herself that she can't express those things, those doubts and those worries and those fears to her family anymore.
Sorry. I was just gonna say with the personal interests, because you guys are right. The whole deal with her being more alone and handling things by herself, it could be also mainly the reason of the censorship and also the phones being
tapped wired,
and having other people around the house could make the military suspect that they might be involved with something too.
She can't give them like any more reason to come around again and harass them more.
Or the people coming over, for that matter. Yeah.
But then for personal interest, I think in the beginning of the movie, all that we see is her hanging out with the friends, her making food or taking care of the kids, and being what I think in the 70s for wealthy families, the mom main goal was to be taking care of the house, taking care of the kids, the husband, and you can see that even in the middle, they don't have much money because without Rubens, she doesn't have a job.
There's a couple scenes at the bank where the bank teller or whatever is like, I can't give this money to you without Rubens' signature.
She can't keep up with the project for the house. There's no reason why she would keep up with the project because there's no other way for them
that was like, it was Rubens' project. It was his decision for the family as sort of like an architect. Like, it was them moving forward and moving into a new space as a family, and it feels wrong to do that without him.
Plus, it was his dream. But the thing is, you do notice a slight interest in her being a lawyer. Not only because she's taking care of his case and trying to find him, but I think every time that she would look to the papers, the habeas
corpus,
I kept noticing that she was not just looking at it just to find her husband, but she had, like, even the lawyer, her friend, was like, do you understand any of what it says? And
she's
like, no,
he's like, I don't know, this would be all Greek to you. She's like, no, let me have it.
I'll read it. So she kept that. And you can see it like the interest, like I want this, I want to be able to fight
out of necessity.
And then like she is still famous till this day for being like one of the greatest activists for Native
Yeah.
communities
Yeah, I mean that
in Brazil.
when we
and-
do
Yeah.
the jump to 1996, she is largely focused on like rainforest conservation and stopping
Mhm.
this
and human rights.
the trans Amazon highway going through the forest at some point, and the land grabbers and everything is what she's talking about.
Yeah, so I just thought it was interesting that she went also in that direction because it shows that she wasn't just concerned about her niche. It wasn't like, oh, I'm thinking only of these kind of people. She also discovered, oh, hey, there's other communities, other people who also suffer in different ways, not necessarily just with the dictatorship, but that I would also like to help because I know what it is to be repressed.
In some
and
ways, indigenous people suffer about the same.
way more.
Yeah, they
Probably.
under a free version of the state
Yeah.
than
Yeah.
the normal political prisoners in the authoritarian military dictatorship.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, to that point, another thing just from the article I was reading was the way that indigenous groups were specifically really violently targeted through this might echo eerily, but a dismantling of government programs meant to support them under the dictatorship. And so I really love this point you guys are raising about her focus in life afterwards being about protecting those groups. And again, it goes back to what I was raising, this interest I had in this legal resistance and the importance of that legal resistance and that importance of understanding the tools being used against and the levers that you can pull yourself against the regime too. I think that that's a really key part of the narrative. I was curious, Anna, to ask you a sort of a meta question as well, because I was reading a piece from AP talking about how this film was so popular in Brazil when it came out, but that it's usually like dramas don't usually play in Brazil in the same way that they might play in the US. I didn't know if you in your experience knew anything about just sort of why this film might be uniquely interesting in Brazil and got this sort of cultural moment that maybe films of other genres are more
It's
tuned to get.
the highest grossing Brazilian movie in the country since 2020, since the COVID-19 pandemic, essentially.
Well, to be fair, I wouldn't know much about it now because I'm not there, so I can't
Yes, fair.
really
Yeah.
feel the sense of what's going on. But what I do know is that even with one of our president right now is from the Labour Party, and we've been in a little bit through hell with the changing of presidents, and
Can't relate. Can't relate here in the States. I don't know.
I mean, many people are happy now. Like my family's happy now, in a way that Lula's being president. But I have many friends who are not left wing, not liberal, not in favor of Lula. Even if they're not liberal, they're very much right wing. So I don't know. It's like I'm sure that the population are still feeling the need to have yes, we need to talk about the pain that we suffered under the dictatorship because the fight to have a left-wing president back that we like, that we respect, was very hard. But at the same time, I'm even talking right now, I feel like I'm a little bit scared of people, like my family or friends being like, oh, she's a liberal. I didn't know about this. She likes the movie. Interesting. So I'm like, I'm sure that just the way the movie is, how beautiful it looks, how the actors portray everything, I think it's a high quality movie. I mean, Walter Salles, every single one of his movies are high praise in Brazil, but with being the highest grossing
Highest grossing, yeah.
movie in Brazil, I'm just hoping that it's because people are trying to turn a new leaf and look into things in a better way and fighting for not going to the way of dictatorship again. And I'm hoping that that's what it is.
Mhm.
But I'm sure that many people hate it too.
Well, yeah, that's fair. That's fair. Yeah, the last thing I wanted to mention is technical aspects of this movie. Anna, you mentioned how beautiful it is, and of course it's well acted, as we've already established. All the performances, Fernanda Torres in particular, are incredible. But like the technical aspects, Salas himself is a very experienced filmmaker, as you just said. And like the look of this film, the tone of it, the aesthetics are just so spot on. It does bring out these notions, these feelings of like nostalgia for a period of time that none of us lived through in a country that only one of us lived in. And yeah, there is just something about the feel of it that that really endeared me to it. That there's multiple points where I'm like, God, this framing, this composition, this color grading is just so beautiful. The use of shadows, etc. When like in the prison cell is so harrowing. Because of all the technical aspects, and the home can either be so welcoming or even frightening when the government agents are there and they're sort of finding the shadows in the house to hide in, and it's so well done there. And then like the Super 8 film footage is really good, and evoking these emotions and these ideas of capturing family memories to remember them, and scrapbooking and the focus on family photos, sort of bookending the film in a kind of way. Just very, very well done from a technical standpoint, in my opinion.
Yeah,
I
mean,
especially like the color grading personally.
Yeah.
It has this. I don't necessarily know how to describe it because I'm not a color grader.
Okay.
But you know this about me.
Interesting.
But it has a very consistent color tone. That is, I think, a little bit warmer than like real life, but I think it really gives the film an interesting look to it that especially reflects the time period. It makes it feel a little bit older, which I think is a nice touch. Because otherwise, I mean, the film is very crisp. It's not like it's trying to evoke 1970s filmmaking, but there's something about the color grading that definitely tuned me into like this is set in a different time period.
Yeah, I like the real comprehensive production design. It's always difficult to get things to look just like logistically on set, to get everything to look like it's from your specific time period. And I mean, this movie's full of cars. We have a lot of driving around. We have a lot of, people out on the beach, and shots of this city that has actually changed quite a bit since this was filmed, since it's set.
Yes.
Blah, blah, blah.
I gotcha.
And the sound design is quite expansive. I like that this house is just like it's no soundproofing at all. You can just hear through all the walls, and so that adds to this familial feeling. It adds to this busy feeling. It makes us really feel like we're in the middle of this bustling place that is their home, because we can hear the thump 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 thump, and the kids yelling at each other, and just like that kind of. Our sound world of the film is much bigger than the picture world, and in the interrogation in the army barracks, we hear the screams and the agony of the people as they are drugged past the door, or as they're in a neighboring cell. We hear a guy singing, and then we hear a guard come in and tell him to shut up. Like all of that is a wonderfully rich sound world that just supports the whole realism of the film.
Yeah, and I want to jump on what you're saying about the sort of the authenticity of the production design, because Salas has talked quite a bit about how he knew the family and spent time in their home in the 60s, he said. So this is places he's familiar with. And I think you feel that in the blocking of scenes when people are casually draped over each other on couches and they're sitting down for meals together and they're dancing. It feels like all of these small moments he remembers and understands. And I think that gives it a very believable quality simply in where people are put on a couch.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm just trying to think if there's anything. Oh, this is more of a fun fact than anything else. But of course, we get this.
And every fact you give me is fun.
Thank you so much. Hey, thanks, buddy. Hey, thanks, pal. Hey, thanks for that. The final scene set in 2014. We see, of course, Eunice there as a very old woman. She is sort of focused on the newest addition to the family, this young toddler, sort of hearkening this idea of like future generations. And then, of course, she watches the TV and sees this program of recounting what happened decades ago and sort of bringing these this core idea Salles has together of like, we must remember what has happened to bring retribution and make sure that these things don't continue to happen, but also form new branches in our family tree and come together regardless. I like that last sequence, and most notably, the fun fact here is that in that sequence, Eunice is played, in fact, by Fernanda Montenegro, who is Fernanda Torres' mother, another very famous Brazilian actress. Before Fernanda Torres, the last Brazilian actress to be nominated for Best Lead at the Oscars for another Walter Salles film called Central Station.
Really good movie.
Which Anna showed me, and yes, it is a very good movie.
Wow.
Cool.
Does that lead
Very
us
sad
right
one.
into the nominations of this
It's-
film?
You know what, Timo? It certainly can. So this film is, of course, nominated for Best Picture. That is why we are talking about it here today. Big surprise Best Picture nomination. I'm not sure if anyone's really saw that one coming.
Yeah.
It is also,
That
of course,
and Nickel Boys were like the only real surprise.
yeah, the
nominations.
9 and 10 slots were the big surprises, but I certainly did not see this one coming. But I'm so happy that we got to talk about it here today. For that reason, Fernanda Torres is nominated for Best Lead Actress, and the only other nomination it has is for Best International Feature.
Which
Probably
now,
unlocked.
now it probably
It could
has.
be. It seemed so certain that another film that we covered, Amelia Perez, just a couple of weeks ago, would clinch that, and now it's more up in the air. We will have to see what happens on Oscar
Did
night.
anything happen with this film at the BAFTAs? Did they give it anything, or does it
They-
ineligible?
They did not give this film any BAFTAs. Amelia Perez did win Best non-English feature film there, and then Fernanda Torres did not win either for the actress race at the BAFTAs. She did win. The only award she's gotten this year or this season is Golden Globe drama, leading actress for a drama.
One last thing I'll say as we pull up our score sheets here, I was also, thinking about imperialist tendencies in the United States of America. I was curious, did the United States government have anything to do with the 1964 coup in
Abrams
Brazil?
certainly not. Certainly
hear no
not, Abrams.
hear no
I
evil,
was
see
talking
no
with Tanner
evil.
about this.
You're talking with...
No, I was so we were talking about it, and I was like,
Does it have to do with fruit?
It may just have to do with fruit.
no, I was like, oh my god, I realized that this happened for like years and years, and did the U.S. knew about it and did nothing about it. He's like, yep.
We're kind of known for that. We love getting our... Well, we still do, but especially back in like the 50s and 60s, ooh,
And
we love getting our
especially
fingers
in
there.
Latin America. That was the favorite playground of the American
No, I think
imperialists.
also the U.S. was in favor. Yeah, the
Oh.
U.S. was in favor of the dictatorship happening. in
Yes, of
Brazil.
course. Yeah.
Yes.
With authoritarian dictatorships often more lenient and in favor of American business interests, which is why the American government often is in favor of those dictatorships in turn.
There was this, I guess it ended up getting declassified in the 70s or whatever, but it's called Operation Uncle Sam, which is a little bit on the nose.
Well, all right. Well, okay.
They had pledged to the forthcoming heads of the coup that they would have logistical support, and if they needed it, on the ground support from U.S.
Oh, good. Yeah.
troops, and they had a battleship that they were ready to deploy as well. And then the coup happened so quickly that they alerted the U.S. said, "Hey, that whole Uncle Sam plan, you don't need to worry about it."
They were too successful. They were too good.
Uh-huh.
So just remember, folks, the U.S. loves to do this, and
Hey,
now a little fun inversion is happening at home.
That's right. Yeah, well, yeah, I invoked this movie and Seed of the Sacred Fig earlier as like these movies from international sources about like authoritarian regimes, how they come to power, and how they infiltrate even people, the average unsuspecting domestic family who thinks they might be insulated from that, and how that's just not the case. I don't know why those messages are coming from overseas. I can't really pinpoint that exactly, but anywho, one less point I'll make. Yeah, one less point
Make your
I'll
plug,
make
and
is,
then let's find out where it goes.
if you're looking to learn more about what Abram just mentioned, and also, fill in some holes for watching Oscar-nominated works this year, the documentary Soundtrack to a Coup d'etat is a good intermingling of both those.
Cool. Okay, let's give it a score. Punch it in.
Okay.
Anna, what would you give this film out of 10 points with 1 decimal point?
9.5.
9.5.
9.5. Okay. Yes.
Okay, here we go.
3, 2, 1, go.
My computer's being weird.
Uh-oh. Tucker's computer's being weird.
Well,
We're in limbo on
there
the
we go.
scores.
We did
We're
it.
waiting.
We did it.
Oh,
Okay.
phew.
Oh, there we
phew.
go. Okay.
There was like a little weird pop-up that I couldn't close. It kept going, ba-ding, ba-ding. I'm like, no, I want to just go to the Google Sheet. Come on.
Uh-huh.
This film, I'm Still Here, has got an 8.3 out of 10. So that's going to put it above Anora and below Conclave at spot number 5 on the list. The point breakdown is Tucker gave it a 7.5, I gave it a 7.9, Tanner gave it an 8.4, and Abram agreed with Anna and gave it a 9.5.
How about that?
So, yeah, there we have it. Tanner, what
Yes?
are we going to discuss next time? Which film?
Oh, next time I think we are going to do a little film that is nominated this year. It's called. Hang on.
What about a film that's nominated next year?
Oh, well, no, Tim. I think we'll stick to something that's nominated this year. And it's time, ladies and gentlemen, it's time to subject our one good, boyish Boy Scout, goody two-shoes son, Abram Buhner, to the film The Substance.
He's already like the color of a cherry tomato. Look at his face.
Yeah, he's quaking over here.
Abram, a self-described, body horror opposite
Bitch?
of an
Oh, sorry.
enjoyer.
Yeah. I don't love body horror either. I'll say
okay.
it, but I've been watching enough Cronenberg in the last year or so
Okay.
that I'm
You're
stepping
dosing
my way.
yourself.
And
Yeah.
I mean, I did go see Titan in the theater, and if I could
sure.
sit through
Titan.
if I could sit through that goddamn movie, then I
Uh-huh.
probably could do this one too.
I can sit through Titan.
Titan. Gosh darn it, The Substance.
What
You're-
choice do I have, really?
Yeah. I will say, I will reiterate it probably multiple times in that review. Super cool that this movie got nominated for Best Picture.
Insane.
Fucking crazy.
Insane.
Yeah.
So that's going to be fun.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, Anna, don't worry, Abram. Anna will be watching it for the first time as well, so she's excited.
And Timo, right? You didn't see it.
Yeah, I didn't see it yet.
Oh yeah, Timo.
Yeah, me and the roommate's gonna go see it.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
So cool. Substance up next. Thanks for joining us, Anna, to talk about I'm Still Here. We will still be here next
Second time on Quest.
That's
Yeah.
right.
That's
Yes.
true.
Yes, that's right.
A full feature appearance on this one, though. That's
Yes.
just a cameo.
A full-on contributor this time. So we appreciate your input. Hearing your family history with this is so interesting. It really adds to our understanding of the film, and hopefully audience got something out of it too. Thank the rest of you, per usual, for having a good discussion. And you know what? I got nothing more to say, so I'll just say it. Stay cool, keep warm. Peace.